Welcome to your yoga class. My name is Jenny and this is a restorative yoga class. So it's going to be super mellow, super chill. In the first part of class, we will be getting into a little bit of movement, a little more active, but just as active as a restore practice can be. So it'll still be nice and gentle. We're not going to get any heat or, break into a sweat. We're not going to do anything crazy like that. But just start to find a little movement, a little fluidity in the body, just kind of get the juices flowing, get things moving around. Maybe there's some stagnant energy from our day, from the weekend, just from life. All right, so during the second part of the class, it'll be a little more restful. We'll hold the poses a little bit longer. And so you are going to want to utilize props. Props are a great way to support the body, to encourage a deep release so that we can settle into these poses a little bit deeper. So a couple of blocks, or maybe just one. Yoga blocks, if you don't have any blocks, then you can grab a stack of books. Anything similar to this, size, shape, kind of firmness. It's nice to bring the ground closer, to fill in some space. As you can see, I like to sit up on one to create a little more space in my hips and pelvis when I sit cross-legged. Cushions, meditation cushions or bolsters can be really nice too. Those are specifically designed for yoga and meditation. If you don't have any of those, grab couch cushions, stack of pillows. You can grab a large blanket, a large thicker blanket. And then just other blankets. I like to have a medium-sized one and a larger one, but have as many as you want. Grab any other props you would like to for your Shavasana, maybe some nice warm socks. I know socks aren't really a prop, but if you want to add some layers, maybe cuddle up in your warmest sweater, anything like that for our Shavasana as we release into that surrender. And for class today, kind of the theme I've been working with this week with classes is balance. And since this isn't a high octane kind of class, we're not going to be doing any crazy balancing poses. We're not going to be standing at all. It's mostly going to be seated and lying down. So to bring balance into this type of practice, it's more of an emotional and mental balance, and how that can also translate off the mat. So we'll be diving a little deeper into that. So to get set up, gather all of your props and then join me on the mat. We're going to start reclined, either in an active rest or in a reclined cobbler's pose. So your choice. It can be nice to even put a blanket down on top of your mat, especially if you're practicing on a hard surface. I've got this nice plush rug, so that gives me a little extra cushion, but just a little added support, just a little extra coziness there. So take your time to start to set up this first pose that we're going to take, just to settle into ground. So active rest is lying on the back, knees bent, feet planted, hands down alongside the body. You could also bring hands to the belly, one hand to the heart, one hand to the belly. So you can take that, or bring the bottoms of the feet to touch and allow the knees to drop open, finding a reclined cobbler's pose here. Now if you have any tension in the low back, you could bring the knees together, lift the hips, tuck the pelvis down, and then set it back down so it spreads the low back out across the mat. There's no arch there. And then find that opening in the knees. You could also bring in your blocks here if there's space. If you're like me and have tight hips, there might be some space between the knees and the ground. And if you're hypermobile and the knees can drop all the way open and those hips are really open, then this may be too far, especially if we're holding it. It might exploit those joints. So even if you're not feeling it, especially if you're not feeling it, it could be doing some damage. So if that's the case, maybe think about sliding a little blanket underneath the knees, quarter. Maybe you're bringing in a little activation, kind of pressing the feet together and letting the knees hover. It's again going to be a little more active there, but with your hypermobile joints, you don't need to work on flexibility and opening. You need to work on that stability around the joints. So just settle into either this reclined cobbler's pose. Again, hands can be on the belly, on the heart, or alongside the body, out to a T, or with feet planted, knees bent in our active rest. And just take some time here to really allow the hips to sink down, allow the shoulders to drop down, allow the chest to open. Kind of check out what the neck's doing. We want it to be in line with the rest of the spine, so that even as we're lying down, we have this nice length through the spine. You're welcome to close the eyes. You can soften the gaze. You could even, if you have a face mask, or not a face mask, an eye mask. I'm sure we've all got face masks. If you've got an eye mask or anything that you'd like to use to cover the eyes. And just take a nice deep breath in. We'll just let it go. Nice sigh out of the mouth. If that felt awesome and you want to do that a few more times, feel free to take that. And then just allowing yourself to settle in, starting to connect down to the earth, feeling, the earth supporting you here. Notice all the areas of the body that are touching the ground. Feel that sensation. Feel that grounding. So as I said, the theme for class tonight is finding balance within. And there are lots of different aspects that we want to bring balance to in our lives. Pretty much almost everything. We want to have a good, healthy balance. Like I say, everything in moderation. There is too much of a good thing. All those things are true. And so we want to be able to find that balance, but recognizing that balance isn't something that, when we find it, we hold on to it and we have it forever. Balance is a little more fleeting than that. It's, little moments of victories where things kind of feel in line, and, knowing that we'll lose that balance, but also having faith that that balance will come back, that we will find it again. We'll get a little more into ways that you can support your faith. Faith doesn't just have to be blind, and it shouldn't be blind, although in some instances it can be. But, we do want to have a solid foundation for that faith, for knowing that balance, that we'll be able to find and achieve that balance again, and knowing that it's going to be that cycle. If you want to use the breath as an anchor to connect you today, then start to find a good steady pace for your breath. Maybe a little lengthening of the inhale and extending of the exhale, a little bit more intentional than just your everyday breathing. You could also work with Ujjayi breath if that's part of your practice, finding that slight activation in the muscles in the back of the throat as you breathe, creating that nice little audible sound. Just another anchor for the mind to tune into. Other anchors you can use to help you stay present is the sensation in the body. You can also work with a mantra, whether that's something like I will find balance within, or I am balanced within, or anything along the lines of the theme, or maybe there's some sort of intention that you're already working with in your life. So something that you can come back to when you start to notice the mind wandering or the body getting fidgety. We want to just find different anchors to help keep us present, because that's really what this practice is about, is staying present to what's going on in the mind and the body and with the soul, so that we know best how to try to bring it back into alignment, bring it back into that balance. Just take a few more rounds of breath here. And know that through this practice, through any class with mine, I do have an intentional structure to the class. but I also know that yoga is very personal, and it should, your practice should be whatever you need it to be. So if we're in stillness and you feel like you need some movement, take it. If we're in movement and you need some stillness, take it. But also stay aware of the thoughts, stay aware of the mind, and kind of notice kind of the root of where those feelings are coming from. Say we're, as we're holding this pose a little bit longer here, if your body is starting to tell you, hey, we're going a little deep, I feel some pinching, burning, tearing sensation, something that feels like it's unhealthy, or if your mind is sending you into, a trigger of past traumas, or it's going to send you into a space mentally that is unsafe, that is when it's okay to move and adjust. However, if you're if you're holding a pose and it's just your, type A personality, or you're just feeling really fidgety, something that's telling you to go and do, and this is a waste of your time, it's just feeling anxious from that uncomfortableness of finding stillness, then that's a time when you want to kind of work through it, sit with those emotions, try not to give into them. So again, it's just kind of bringing that awareness to the body, to the mind, and to the intention of those thoughts and the feelings, kind of what they're there for, where they're coming from. Just a few more rounds of breath here in our opening pose. Just helping us to ground down and settle. Awesome work. If the legs are open in that cobbler's pose, bring the hands to the outsides of the thighs and use them to gently draw the knees together. If you have any props, go ahead and set those off to the side. And then just shift onto one side of the body, letting the knees drop. Gently pressing your way up to a seat. Like I said, we're going to bring in a little bit of fluid movement to kind of get the energy moving a little bit in the first part of class, and then we'll settle in a little bit more. So find a seated position. This is when I like to bring in my little medium blanket, so that it's not as high as the blocks, but it still gives my booty a little lift. And what this does is that it allows a little more space in the hips so that you can tilt the pelvis forward, get more into a little bit more of a neutral position, more natural way that the spine kind of sits. And especially, this is good especially if when you're sitting down you feel like you have to kind of round out. That takes the support out of the hips. And or if you just have some tight hamstrings, so you feel like you need to lean back or round out to sit up nice and tall, that's when that cushion can really come in handy. So again, just like we did lying down, we want to find that nice tall spine. Head stacked over the heart so that the neck is just an extension of that length. Let's release the arms down alongside the body. One way that we can bring balance into the mind and into the body is linking breath to movement. That just kind of helps us to ground and center. So let's just kind of play with that a little bit. So again, whatever, if you're working with Ujjayi breathing, continue with that, or you can just lengthen the breath. So we release the arms down alongside the body. Inhale, we're going to reach the arms out and up just as far as feels okay. Maybe they just, come out to here. Maybe they're in a V. Maybe they reach all the way up. And on an exhale, just release the arms back down. Awesome. And we'll just repeat here for a few rounds. Inhale, reach them out and up. Exhale, release them down. Just moving at your pace. Inhaling to raise, lengthening through the side body, lengthening through the spine. Exhale, release down. All right, we're going to switch it up a little bit here. Inhale, send the arms out to the side. As you raise them up towards the sky, maybe they come together, and then we'll start to lower them down to heart center. As you do, interlace the hands, open up through the palms, and then press the hands down. Inhale this time to send the hands forward as you raise them up. And as you do, if the hands need to separate, feel free. And then exhale, release the hands and bring them back down alongside the body. So we just added a little bit to that flow. Let's repeat that. Inhale, arms out to the side, raise them up towards the sky. You can bend the elbows to bring the hands together, interlace through the hands as they lower down to heart center. Maybe try the opposite interlacing. Open up through the palms, press them down. Inhale, sending the palms forward as you raise them up, separating the hands whenever you need to, and on an exhale, releasing the arms back down. And let's just take one more round like this. Inhale, arms out and up. Again, you can bend in the elbows as the hands come overhead. Bring the hands together as they lower down to heart center. Interlace through the hands, or interlace the fingers. Open up through the palms. Press the palms down. Inhale. Bring those hands forward, up and back. Releasing the hands when you need to, and exhale, releasing arms down. Beautiful work. We'll plant that right hand onto the ground, or you can use a block again to bring that ground closer. We'll inhale to reach the left arm up and over, finding a nice side stretch here. And deep exhale. Inhale, come back up through center. Release left hand down and maybe to a block. And reach the right arm up and over. Exhale here. So we'll pick up that pace a little bit. Just go as deep as feels okay. Inhale up through center. Exhale. Arch to the right as the right hand comes down. Inhale up through center. Exhale, arch to the left. Awesome work. Continue with this flow, but make sure that the sits bones are grounded, that the knees and the hips stay connected. So just taking it as far as feels okay without lifting up through the side. So we have that nice square base of the hips, and then we're extending through the side body, extending through the low back, through the shoulder. Linking our breath to the movements. You're welcome to slow it down even more if you'd like to take a few more rounds of breath on each side. All right, now we're gonna take a little bit of rounding in the next round, rounding through the spine. So instead of just going side to side, we'll bring in a little more action in the spine. So as you exhale over towards the right, we'll drop the left arm down. The hands could come towards the ground or they could hover, and we'll just start to kind of hover our way over towards the other side. And then reaching up and over. And again, releasing down. Again, hands could find the ground or arms could hover as we open up to the other side. Just circling down and around, little half circles here. And we're still trying to keep those 6 sits bones grounded. Doesn't matter how far you're folding forward. Let's take one more to each side. Dropping down, circling around, opening up to the left, and making our way back. Dropping down, circling around, over towards the right. Come back up through center and release both arms down. Awesome work. Now we'll just work with the shoulders a little bit more. Inhale to draw the shoulders forward, opening up through the upper back, and then raise the shoulders up towards the ears. Exhale to send the shoulders back, pinching the shoulder blades together and down and around. So some shoulder circles here with some shrugging. Inhale Raise them forward and up. Exhale, send them back and down. There may be some snap, crackling, and popping going on. The shoulder blades can kind of be used as a little massage, so there might be some crunchies in there. Awesome work. And then we're going to reverse that, so with the shoulders down, send them back, opening up through the chest on an inhale. Exhale, bring them up and roll them forward and down. Linking the breath to the movement. If my cues don't fit for your breath, then go ahead and make up your own, but just stay connected to the breath, connected to the movement. Awesome. Release the shoulders down, sitting up nice and tall, bringing in a little love for the neck. Inhale, lengthening up through the crown of the head. Exhale, drop the right ear over towards the right shoulder. Oh, let's pause here. That feels really good. One more deep inhale. And on an exhale, drop the chin down towards the chest. Half circles, taking the head around till the left ear is hovering over the left shoulder. Oh, let's pause here just for a round of breath. Awesome. If it would feel good here, pick up the pace. Take a nice deep inhale. Exhale, chin down towards the chest. Inhale, right ear hovering over right shoulder. And exhale, chin towards the chest. Inhaling to raise left ear over left shoulder. And exhale, chin down towards the chest. Take a few more rounds here. And you're welcome to pause and take a few rounds of breath on each side if that would feel good. Especially if you have any extra tenderness or any sore spots in your neck and the shoulders. You might find some imbalances here, just as we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. Sometimes, we work our dominant side a little bit more than the other, so it tends to be a little more tense. Awesome, Mark. Let's make our way back towards neutral. Nice work. Let's bring the hands to the knees. And we're going to just take some circles with the torso. So first we're going to bring the chest and belly forward, circling them over towards the right. Exhale to send kind of back, arc or rounding through the spine, and then over towards the left, and back up through center. So circling through the torso, I'm feeling a little bit of stretching in my low back and the lumbar spine, the mid back, the thoracic, even up into the upper back. And we're keeping the sits bones grounded. And then when you're ready, just reverse the direction of those circles. Making your way back towards neutral. One last little set of last bit of movement here before we settle into a little more stillness. Bending the knees, planting the feet on the ground. And walk the feet a little further than hip distance. You can keep sitting on your prop if that feels good, or you could remove it, because we are going to be laying back. So bringing the hands back behind you for support. And then just dropping the knees over towards the right, up through center, over towards the left. And now here, it's okay if the sits bones lift. And in fact, if it feels good, if you take this nice and slow and allow, maybe the left sits bones to lift, and you can put a little more pressure into that right sits bone, you get a little booty massage, and it feels really good. I usually am pretty tense in that muscle. I know that that's a typical place for, a little bit of pain, a little bit of tension, at least for me. And so if it feels good, if you found that sweet spot, maybe pause there, take a few rounds of breath. You can even pause with the knees on each side, getting a little bit into the twist. Very minimal twisting here because we're not really bringing the spine into this. This is more through the hips, the femur, and the pelvis. A little twisting in the low back. Awesome. Just a couple more rounds of breath. All right, now, here, moving on. If you were still sitting on your prop, go ahead and remove it. And go ahead and clear any props off your mat that have them nearby. And take a moment to lie ourselves down. Finding that active rest, so knees bent, feet planted in towards the ground. Find that nice length through the spine, and then press into the feet, lift the hips, tilt the pelvis down, and then set the hips back down. So we're just kind of spreading out through the low back. Awesome work. Allow the shoulders to drop back and down, opening up through the chest. Now from here, the legs are hip distance, and we're going to walk the feet in towards the glutes. Kind of started with a little movement through the upper body, so let's take a stretch through the hips and hip flexors. We're going to come into a supported bridge. So you're going to want either a block or a big thick blanket or a bolster, something to fill in the space between you and the ground as we come into our bridge pose. So really press into the feet, press into the shoulders. There's a slight engagement in the core as we press into the back of the head as well. And then lift up through the hips. Slide whatever prop you're using. I'm going to use my big thick blanket. Fold it up to fill in that space normally created or created by your bridge, and then setting the hips down. So we're looking to just get the hips above the heart, so they don't have to go very far. If you're using a block, either stay on level 1 or maybe a level 2. Level 3, the tallest, that's way too much, too extreme for what we're accomplishing here. So getting a nice stretch through the hip flexors. You're allowing the arms to drop down alongside the body. If it would feel good, you could even puff up the chest a little bit more, really tuck the shoulder blades underneath. That creates a natural external rotation through the arms, so the palms might naturally come up towards the sky. Finding your breath here. And we're going to hold our supported bridge for several rounds of breath. If you feel like you're maybe wanting a little bit more activation, a little more sensation in the hip flexors, then maybe you could start to walk the feet out. You could work with maybe extending one leg all the way out along the ground if that feels okay, noting that that is going to create a little more back bending so that that compression through the low back may not be the safest for you.
So if you'd like, you could play with, extending one leg out at a time. Maybe eventually both legs come out. But again, this is some extreme back bending. And so depending on if this feels right in your body, doesn't feel right for me. So I'm gonna stay with my knees not super bent, but definitely not all the way straight. Just to find a little more opening through those hip flexors. This is a nice release for the low back, releasing a little compression there. So we don't want to add to that compression by taking the back bend a little too far. Since working that balance, it's finding that edge of where you're challenging the body, but we're not forcing it. We're not pushing it to the extreme. We're not doing anything that's going to cause it harm. Just kind of challenging it a little, pushing that edge, and kind of playing with that balance between. So like I said, balance can, it's important to cultivate balance in all aspects of our lives. One place that can be particularly challenging is a work-life balance, especially if for many of us, we now work from home. And so we don't have that disconnect of being able to go to and leave the office, and even that time, that commute time to kind of decompress and shift gears. So making sure that we have that work and play balance, that personal life and work-life balance. Another place that sometimes gets thrown off balance is caring for ourselves versus caring for others. And we can't really take care of others without taking care of ourselves. So sometimes we're at one extreme where we just give and give and give and give and don't really think about what that is taking from us, and not taking that time to give to ourselves so that we can continue to give to others. And there will be some times in our life, in certain relationships, where it's just take, and recognizing that imbalance within that relationship isn't going to last. That's unsustainable. So finding a happy balance in our relationships, making sure that we're taking time to spend quality time with those people, but also spending quality time with ourselves. And taking that quality time with ourselves, also, it's knowing that balance between when to go, and when to rest. Maybe it's balancing the introvert and extrovert. Take a few more rounds of breath here. And when you feel ready, starting to walk the feet back, planting them firmly on the ground. Really connecting to the shoulders, to the back of the head, and as you press down, finding a slight engagement in the core to lift the hips just high enough to slide that prop out from underneath, and then gently starting to set the hips back down. Before doing anything else, just pause here for a moment in a neutral spine. So we just worked some back bending. We want to give our spine just a little bit of time to kind of reset, recalibrate in that neutral spine before we take any counter stretches or before we do anything further. Just finding a nice release through the low back, and then if it would feel good, you could start to draw the knees in towards the chest, maybe even tucking through the tailbone. So finding a little rounding through the low back, maybe some circles side to side through the knees. Awesome, Mark. And just because my hip flexors are feeling like it needs it after this, let's try to create a little internal massage for our hip flexors. So releasing the left knee down, or left foot down. You could keep that foot planted on the ground, or you could extend it out along the ground. That's just going to be a little more opening in the hip, maybe a little too extreme. And with that foot planted, that also gives you a little more solid base. So whatever feels good with that left leg. And then bring both hands to the right knee, flexing the right toes back. And then just use the hands to kind of move that knee and that whole leg around. So we're kind of guiding the top of the femur in the hip socket. And for me, definitely, and hopefully for others, this can kind of create, it's a pretty big compression on my hip flexor, but it kind of allows a little massage for the hip flexor, kind of, that little self-massage there. So if that feels good, take a few rounds of that. And if not, you can open up that knee to the side in a half frog pose, half reclined frog. Fantastic work. From here, if they're not there, move the props, stack of props or something over towards the left side of the mat. So whether that's a couple blocks or a blanket, something there to fill in some space. Bolster would be perfect. And then nice and slow, we're going to start to draw that right knee over towards the left. Allow that left booty cheek and hip bone to lift, and we're going to come into a twist. And we've got our props there so that we're not trying to crank the knee all the way down towards the ground. That's not what we're trying to accomplish here. We're not going for a super deep twist. We're not trying to wring ourselves out. We're just trying to kind of work a little bit of stretching through the outer hip, into the glute, into the low back, and find a little gentle twisting through the mid and lower back. So if you want it to be a little more gentle, allow that right shoulder to raise up off the ground, coming a little more onto the left side. So not quite as an extreme of a twist. You could also invite that right shoulder towards the ground. It definitely doesn't need to touch, and we definitely don't want to force it down. You could extend that right arm out. Maybe mine just naturally found a blanket that's there, and that feels awesome for me. We want to still be able to breathe deep here. So even though we're all twisted up, we should still be able to take those deep belly breaths. And if not, it's a good sign you've gone a little too far. So if it feels like you have to hold the breath, or it feels forced or stagnant, go ahead and back out. If you've got blocks, maybe turn them up on their side. Maybe throw in another blanket or pillow or whatever you need. But again, this is not an extreme twist. Finding that balance. Taught this similar theme yesterday in a core and restore class, so it was more active. We did work on balancing poses, and if you're interested in that, You could just go back on the same feed to yesterday's class. And what we focused on is finding that strength within. So building up that in the physical practice to bring balance, we build up that core strength and move from that strength that we find in our core, in our center. You can also build faith in the balance of your physical practice by continuing to practice, getting a knowledge of terminology, of basic yoga poses, specific alignments that work best for your body. So, when we talk about having faith that when we lose balance, it will come back. It's not just blind faith. It's based in that solid center that we have, both that physical strength in the core and, the center of our knowledge of that practice. But also knowing that, sometimes we're going to feel like we're just beautiful, graceful ballerinas, and sometimes we're going to feel like we're baby giraffes on roller skates. And so, the idea is whatever it is that you want to bring balance into in your life is to establish a solid foundation of what balanced feels like, of things that you can do to help bring you back into balance. For me, when I'm feeling, I was talking to a friend yesterday, when I'm feeling super anxious or stressed, things that I like to do is get outside in nature and clean and organize my house. Those two things help to at least bring me back into physical and mental balance so that I can more easily find that balance. And knowing that it's going to teeter, knowing that it's fleeting, but that it will always come back. Got a few more rounds of breath in the twist on this side. Beautiful work. And then as you feel ready, you can bring the hands to assist the knees. You start to rock back towards center. But then we're going to allow that right knee to open out towards the right. But first, again, take a little moment in neutral as you untwist through the spine. And then maybe bring in a block or two, maybe blankets to rest that leg on. As you open up that leg into, could be a reclined tree pose if you want to bring that foot in towards the left inner thigh, or you could keep the knee and ankle in line and just kind of open up into, like little Captain Morgan kind of movement. We won't be here for as long as we held the twist. We'll just stay for maybe about 5 or so rounds of breath. Nice little counter stretch. Releasing through the hips, releasing that twist, opening up through the inner thigh. And when you feel ready, drawing that knee back up and releasing it down, maybe stepping both feet up. If you want to take maybe some reclined windshield wipers with those knees side to side, or drawing both knees in towards the chest, maybe a little rocking side to side, or whatever would feel good. Maybe extending the legs up and shaking them out. Whatever you'd like to reset between sides. Then when you feel ready, both feet on the ground, and then we'll draw the left knee in towards the chest. Again, your choice if you want to have that more stable base, keeping that right foot planted on the ground, or if you want to bring a little more sensation and opening into the hip, extending that leg out if that feels okay. And then using the hands on the left knee as you flex the left toes back to kind of circle around and moving the top of the femur in that hip socket and maybe creating a little self-massage for those hip flexors. if that movement isn't feeling good for you, you can just open up the knee, kind of pause in a single-legged reclined frog pose. And as we set up our twist, keep in mind that we work both sides to bring balance, but that we don't treat both sides equally, or we don't treat them like they're going to react the same. So stay in tune with that. Notice any differences in each side and make any proper adjustments. So as you feel ready, we'll start to bring that left knee over towards the right. The left hip will raise. And don't be afraid to roll onto the right side of the body at first. We want to have props there so that we're not trying to crank the knee all the way down towards the ground. So I've got a blanket on top of blocks. So again, we're just looking to get a nice stretch through the outer hip, a little bit into the low back, and working a bit of twisting, but it doesn't have to be extreme. So if it feels better to have that left shoulder up off the ground, laying a little more on the right side of the body, feel free to take that. You could also invite that left shoulder towards the ground. Doesn't need to touch. Maybe that arm extends. That feels a little extreme for me, so I'm going to bring in my blanket onto this side so that my arm has a little more something to rest on, so I don't have to take it so far. I'm definitely feeling this a little more through my back on that left side. So just notice how it feels different in your body. And this awareness can also help to bring balance. With awareness, we start to become more keenly in tune to, not just in our physical body, but in our mental and emotional bodies, to things that we can work with, things that we know we can change, things that are pliable, things that we can influence. And there also, brings awareness to those things that we can't change, things that are fixed, things that are, it's just the way we're built, it's just the way, the world is, that type of thing, just the way someone else is, those things that we, as much as we want to, we cannot control. So this awareness helps us, again, to know what we can learn to work with to bring balance and what we need to learn to accept to bring balance. So staying aware of the body, stay aware of your thoughts, stay aware of the breath. Up 3 more rounds of breath here. As you feel ready, and you can use the hands to gently guide the knee back towards center, planting the left hip on the ground, pausing for just a moment here in a nice neutral spine. Maybe taking this moment to transfer a prop or two over towards the left side as we get ready to set up our reclined tree or little counterbalance. So as you feel ready, knee in towards the chest, flex the toes back, and then just start to open that left knee out towards the left. So you can keep the foot and ankle in line, opening up to, I don't know what this would be called, a little Captain Morgan stance. Or you could bend the knee a little deeper, drawing the left foot into the inner right thigh, creating a fallen tree, or I guess reclined tree. And using blocks to kind of fill in that space for the knee. Or using any sort of prop to kind of fill in that space. So whatever works best for you on this side, whatever feels good. Doesn't have to be the same exact as the other side. I know we won't be here too long. So whenever you start to feel ready, nice and complete here, you can start to draw that left knee back up towards center. Finding that foot, maybe bringing the right knee to join, and then any counter movements here. You could take those windshield wipers, you could bring the knees in towards the chest, maybe taking a happy baby. Sending the knees and hips out wide, feet up towards the sky, knees in towards the armpits. You could extend the legs up and shake them out. Anything that would feel good here. Anything that the body's craving. And we'll start to make a transition into our Shavasana or our final relaxation. But take as much time as you'd like, again, to explore any final movements or stretches. Maybe you've got a little ritual you like to round out your practice with. Taking as much time as you'd like to wrap it up, to finish up your practice, before settling in to our final pose, our final relaxation. So a traditional Shavasana is done on the back, legs extended, toes turned out, palms turned up. You're welcome to take this if this feels great for you. Since we've got props, you might as well use them. So if it would feel good, you could slide a blanket, cushions, bolsters underneath the knees. Nice little support there. But know that if lying on your back doesn't feel awesome right now, don't do it. Lie on your side, lie on your belly. Even do a seated meditation. Use the props in any way to support you. Get creative. There's no wrong way for you to Shavasana. And the purpose of this pose is to practice surrender. Which surrendering is a big part of finding balance within. And surrendering to those things that we cannot control.
surrendering to forces that are at work, surrendering to the things that we can control and the effort that we put into that. It's not easy to make sustainable changes, and it needs, they need time. All the work that we put into it, all the intention, that needs time to go to work, to integrate, and to actually help facilitate those shifts and changes. So surrender can be one of the hardest things for us to do as humans, and one of the most necessary things for us to do. And sometimes just surrendering to our emotions, surrendering to our bodies, surrendering to the process is exactly what we need to bring things back into balance. So this is an opportunity to practice that. Take your time to set up your position. We'll be here for about a minute. Just finding a moment of silence. This time to not have to do anything. There's nowhere to go, nowhere to be, nothing to do right now. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Taking this moment to just surrender, to just be. If you do have more time to dedicate to your Shavasana, please do. Take as much time as you'd like to continue this practice of surrender. And wherever you find yourself before we start to move again, just take a moment of gratitude for yourself, for carving out this time, for stepping on your mat, for your willingness to explore and to stay present. As you feel ready, wherever you are, just start to bring some movement back into the body. Nice and slow, nice and gentle. If you're lying down, not already there, just gently start to roll onto one side of the body. And as you feel ready, pressing your way back up to a comfortable seat. I'll invite invite you to bring the hands to heart center or take any other meaningful gesture with the hands. I want to thank you once again for joining me, for allowing me into your homes to share the magic of yoga. I see you, I honor you, and I bow to you. Namaste.